Hey everyone, Ivan here. Welcome to the final video in our Austrian economics series. Today we're examining key historical economic events through an Austrian perspective. Throughout this series, we explore Austrian concepts like sound money, business cycles, inflation, and entrepreneurship. Now we'll see how these principles help explain major economic crises that mainstream economics often struggles to account for. The Austrian school provides powerful insights into why economies collapse and why centrally planned systems consistently fail, while free markets create prosperity. By understanding these historical patterns, you can better protect your wealth and recognize warning signs before others do. Let's explore how monetary history, viewed through an Austrian lens, reveals timeless economic principles that remain relevant today. The manipulation of money isn't new. It dates back to ancient times when rulers debased coins by reducing their precious metal content. The Roman Empire's currency debasements led to severe inflation and contributed to its economic decline. The denarius coin went from nearly pure silver to less than 5% silver content in just a few centuries. Modern central banking began with institutions like Sweden's Riksbank in 1668 and England's Bank of England in 1694. These early central banks were granted special privileges to create money and finance government spending, often leading to inflationary episodes. Austrian economic Ludwig von Mises identified this pattern. Monetary expansion leads to artificial booms followed by an inevitable bust. This pattern has repeated throughout modern history. As Mises wrote in his work, Theory of Money and Credit, the ultimate cause of the business cycle is credit expansion by the banking system. This insight helps explain financial panics throughout the 19th century. Contrary to mainstream narratives, historical evidence suggests that free banking systems with competing currency were often more stable than centralized systems where money creation is monopolized. Economic historians have documented how competitive banking systems in places like Scotland during its free banking era, 1716 to 1844, experienced remarkable stability compared to centralized systems. The classical gold standard period, approximately 1870 to 1914, was characterized by remarkable monetary stability and economic growth worldwide. Under these systems, currencies were defined by specific weights of gold, limiting governments' ability to create money out of thin air. This provided a natural check against inflation and currency manipulation. During this period, prices remained remarkably stable over the long term. Temporary deflation often occurred naturally as productivity improvements made goods less expensive to produce, a benign form of falling prices that benefited consumers. World War I marked a turning point. To finance an unprecedented military spending, major nations suspended the gold standard, leading to massive inflation in countries like Germany. The Weimar Republic's hyperinflation in the early 1920s provided a stark example of what happens when money creation becomes untethered. At its peak, prices doubled every few days, wiping out savings and devastating the middle class, as documented in Adam Ferguson's When Money Dies. The social consequences were devastating. People who had never considered breaking the law found themselves cheating, stealing, lying, and devising an infinity of methods, fair and foul, to protect themselves and their families from the effects of inflation. The eventual currency reform under Ludwig Edward demonstrated the Austrian principle that sound money is foundational to prosperity. By establishing a stable currency and liberalizing markets, West Germany experienced an economic renaissance while East Germany, under Communist central plan, languished. Communist regimes provide particularly stark examples of what happens when Austrian principles are completely violated. In Soviet Russia, the elimination of market prices made economic calculation impossible, just as Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises had predicted in his famous 1920 paper, Economic Calculation in the Socialist Commonwealth. Without market-determined prices to guide production decisions, the Soviet economy experienced chronic shortages of basic goods despite abundant natural resources. People waited hours in line for basic necessities, while governments' stores had empty shelves. In China, Mao's Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962, represented one of history's most devastating economic experiments. Central planners divorced from economic reality and market feedback, creating policies that resulted in the deaths of tens of millions through famine. As Austrian economists demonstrated, the problem wasn't just bad leadership, but a fundamental calculation problem. Without market prices, economic planners cannot determine how to allocate resources efficiently. More recently, Venezuela's experiment with 21st century socialism has led to one of history's worst hyperinflations, with prices doubling every few weeks at its peak. Despite having the world's largest oil reserves, centralized economic control and monetary mismanagement reduced a once prosperous country to extreme poverty. Cuba's decades-long experiment with centralized economic control has similarly led to chronic shortages, with the average Cuban earning just $30 per month despite universal education and healthcare, demonstrating that prosperity requires economic freedom, not just social services. My point here is not criticize countries or states. I'm just reading history facts. Since 1971, the world has conducted an unprecedented experiment, a global financial system based entirely on fiat currency with no commodity backing. This has enabled an explosion in global debt and recurring financial crises of increasing severity, exactly as Austrian economists predicted. When money can be created without limit, it tends to flow into financial assets first, creating boom-bust cycles that primarily benefit asset holders while harming those dependent on wages. Nations that abuse their monetary systems face severe consequences, from Latin American currency crisis to Asian financial crisis in the 1990s to more recent events. The pattern is consistent with the Austrian business cycle theory. One consequence has been dramatically rising wealth inequality. When new money enters the economy through financial assets, those who own such assets benefit first, while those furthest from the money creation process, typically wage earners, see their purchasing power erode. This is known as the Cantillon effect, that we already discussed in earlier video. Those closest to the source of new money benefit disproportionately, creating a structural inequality unrelated to productivity or merit. Artificially suppressed interest rates distort the entire economy, encouraging debt over savings and speculative investments over productive ones. This leads to what Austrian economists call malinvestment. Resources flow into projects that appear profitable only because of manipulated interest rates. The result has been recurring financial crises of increasing severity, requiring ever larger interventions that create moral hazard and set the stage for future larger crises. What can we learn from viewing monetary history through an Austrian lens? First, sound money is essential for sustainable prosperity. Throughout history, Some money systems produce stability, while fiat systems eventually create crises. Second, central planning fails due to knowledge problems. No central authority can match the distributed intelligence of the market. Third, economic freedom correlates with human flourishing. Free market economies consistently outperform centrally planned ones in creating prosperity. Fourth, monetary manipulation has consequences. Though effects may be delayed, currency debasement inevitably leads to capital consumption and malinvestment. For everyday investors and citizens, these insights suggest: first, be skeptical of new era claims that this time is different. Second, understand the difference between genuine wealth creation and artificial boons. Third, consider allocating some portfolio space to monetary assets outside the fiat system. Fourth, appreciate how economic freedom creates prosperity while central planning creates poverty. These resources we were actually discussing in the previous video for more understanding in this matter. For deeper understanding, I recommend also works available at including Ludwig von Mises' Human Actions, Maureen Rothbard, What Has Government Done to Our Money, and Friedrich Hayek's The Nationalization of Money. As we conclude this Austrian economic series, I hope you gain valuable insights into how these principles can help you navigate an increasingly complex financial landscape. What economic principles from the Austrian school have you found most valuable? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. This is Ivan helping you build real wealth through timeless principles. Thanks for watching in this series.